After a long overnight flight, we finally arrive in Paris. We meet Renee and Joe and check out our Airbnb. All hungry, we walk the Marais and decide on a late lunch or early dinner at Le Perregaux. And our high point is bone marrow for the girls. And after we feast, we are ready for bed. Bonsoir. Day 2, and we are off and running. Well, not running, because you shouldn't run through the streets. You have to leisurely walk through and look at every single dessert in every single window. And that could be ice cream, that could be cheese and bread, that could be macaroons. So now we're hungry, but we're going to ignore being hungry. And we are on our way to the Musée Carnival, which is a historical museum about Paris. It's been there since 1548. First, we're greeted by a giant statue of Louis XIV in his prime. The first room is filled with signs from shops. These could be wooden, these could be paintings, hundreds and hundreds of years old, in excellent condition, like they were just finished, beautifully displayed. We wander down to the basement, we discover medieval history of France, and back upstairs we see a gorgeous rendering of the Hôtel de Ville, which is the City Hall of Paris at night. And we will get to see this later. So we only visit 2 of the 5 floors because we need a little coffee and we need a little croissant. So we head outside to a luscious courtyard, to the Fabula restaurant. And as we sit to have our coffee, it starts to rain. So we sit there a little bit, but then we go off and we wander more the streets of Paris. Obviously looking for more food. We're ready for a sandwich to take back to our apartment so that we can rest up for the evening, because tonight in Paris is White Night. Now, White Night in Russia meant that people stayed up all night long. It never got dark. They danced, they sang, they drank. It was crazy. So I'm prepared for it to be crazy in Paris. But Paris White Night is a celebration of the arts. We follow the crowd into a beautiful building where there is going to be a dance performance. And the piece that we get to see by Lila Kay translates into It's You We Adore. And guess what? We did. We adored it. And it included dancers from Southern California. How bizarre. Walking home, we reminded ourselves it was Saturday night. We were in Paris, France, and we did not have a reservation. So instead, we bought a roast chicken off a vendor in the street and some vegetables and headed home with a bottle of wine, had a lovely dinner, and crashed. So what do you do on day 3 when it's a Sunday and you really want to go to Notre Dame, but you don't want to stand in line? Oh, you stand in line to go to Mass. So we are out of the apartment before 8 o'clock for a long and picturesque walk to Notre Dame. On our way to the church, we pass the Hôtel de Ville, or the Paris Town Hall. Now, this is a 19th century reconstruction, but it is stunning. But by contrast, this is where they used to hang people. Now we have to cross the Seine, so we pick one of the 9 bridges to go across. And we do see the Pont de Neuf, which is the oldest bridge that has an art installation, and we'll have more pictures about that later in the tour. All the cafes are sleepily opening, chairs are set up, menus are placed on tables, and we finally turn a corner and there is Notre Dame. We go inside, we have Mass, and we tour the back of the church. You can't believe that this cathedral was damaged so terribly from a fire in recent years. You really couldn't tell. Although walking behind the altar, there was a faint smell of smoke, but hopefully that will dissipate eventually. So we've been up and walking and saying our prayers. I think we deserve some hot chocolate. So now we are on a quest for the perfect Parisian breakfast, and we are headed toward Le Deux Magots, a classic French cafe. On our way to the cafe, we do a quick detour to the Relais Christine, which is the hotel that Renee and Joe spent their honeymoon in 38 years ago. It was great to see it. Stripes are everywhere, awnings, chairs, clothing. Food is everywhere, seafood and shellfish and desserts are everywhere, and we haven't experienced hot chocolate. So now we are at the creme de la creme, so to speak. And Renee and I and Jim all have it, and it is the best we've ever had. After that decadent breakfast, we need to walk off some calories. So back across the Seine on a bridge, and this time we stop and take a look at the Pont Neuf with the installation by the artist J.R. It is sort of like draping the bridge in a Swiss Alp sock. And this is his tribute to Christo and his wife. Unfortunately, it was damaged by a storm, and we weren't able to go in and see it, and the opening was delayed. But we've really enjoyed the pictures of it online. We return to our apartment to take a little nap and rest up to go out and eat again. This time we go to Fragola Pizzeria, and it is not the best dinner because the waitress, it's her first day, and she's waiting on tables and crying in the corner. So it wasn't going really well for her. But we made the best of it. Monday brings its own challenges to a visit to France because a lot of things are closed. But we thought, what a perfect day to take the metro and go to Montmartre and see the church Sacré-Cœur and great views of the city. So we do, and one of my favorite things to do in the metro is to take pictures of American films that are having their debut in France. Out of the metro, we head up the hill past some chickens, and we see Sacré-Cœur, which was completed in 1914. We see Joan of Arc up on a horse, and a great view of the whole entire city of Paris. After we tour the church and look around some of the shops, we decide to head to the Dali Paris Museum, which has the largest collection in France of his work. And it blows us away. Outside the museum, we stop and have a little bite at Le Chez Plumeau. Jim has his first crepe with chocolate, and I have my first escargot of the trip. Walking back to the metro, again, we see lots of shops and buy sweet things to bring back to the States. At 5 o'clock, it must be cocktail hour somewhere, we meet my friend Xavier Rons from my Paris Opera days, and he has a great time meeting Renee and Joe as well. We take Renee and Joe around the corner to the Palais Royal after a drink and see Daniel Berlin's columns and do some silly poses. Now it starts to rain a little bit, and the rain gets stronger and stronger, but I'm determined to show them the Galerie Lafayette in its last 5 minutes before it closes for the evening. So we aren't able to do our plan, which was to buy things in their food court. So instead, we go across the street to the Intercontinental Hotel and have a delightful dinner that included, for me, steak tartare. Perfect way to end day 4. Tuesday, we begin with some delicious pastries and fruit for the morning that we share in our apartment. This morning, we are determined to find a covered passageway that is very close to our apartment. There are many of them in Paris, but this one is all about food. It's called the Marché d'Enfants Rouges. It's the oldest market in Paris. Since this is our last full day in Paris, we want to find a church with a famous painting by the artist Delacroix of the Deposition de la Croix, or the taking down of Christ from the cross. And someone recommended this to me if we weren't going to go to the Louvre, because this was an unusual, beautiful painting that nobody even knew was there practically. The church was from 1844, and it was charming inside, and squirreled away in this little corner was this famous painting. So I'm really glad we got to see it. After we left the church, our husbands decided to pose as toy soldiers between 2 pillars. Now it's time to visit one of the gardens. So we head to Place de Vosges, which is an elegant square where Louis XIII got married. It's also famous because Victor Hugo lived there, who wrote Les Miserables. We didn't visit Victor's house, but we did go to Café Hugo and had a very relaxed, long lunch with a little people watching. So after lunch, we went walking again, and we passed one of the shops I wanted to show Renee called La Boutique de Cara, and that's Renee's oldest daughter's name. It was a vintage shop. It was quite fun. On Wednesday, we decided to head out to Giverny to see Monet's house and garden. This involves another trip on a different metro that will let us out right across from the Arc de Triomphe, which is in the center of the Place de Charles de Gaulle, and in the distance you can see the Eiffel Tower. So Jim got to cross 3 sites off his France bucket list. After a long trip in the van, first location we arrive at is the cemetery of the town, which includes Claude Monet and his family, all buried in the same plot, one on top of another. And it is a quaint little French village. And we arrive at the garden, which is like no garden we've ever seen, completely designed by Monet himself. And we see his famous bridge that he painted many times, and we see the pond with his lilies. And it really was spectacular. And the lavender was in full bloom. It was just beautiful. Next, we go into his house. That was a little disappointing because all of the artwork was done by students. None of it was his original work, but there was furniture that was from his living there, so it was okay. And we went outside, and there were live chickens, and we got to see some chickens. Returning to Paris, we now walk to our reservation at Café d'Etienne. Cosmopolitans await and yellowtail, and the most amazing ice cream sundae we have ever shared, although I think Renee had more than we did. Anyway, we join the Bonitos on the metro, and we head back to our lovely apartment in the Marais for the end of our last night in Paris. So now we say goodbye to Paris. We say goodbye to door number 6. We're just Americans waiting for an Uber. And once we land, then we are happy girls in a taxi with our hubbies. We get a view from the cab and get into our Airbnb, which is phenomenal. And we go walking down the street to see if we can find some place for dinner that doesn't need a reservation. And the first place we look is fabulous. It's called Must, and you must go there if you're ever in Porto. We're going to start our day off with a delicacy for breakfast, the iconic pastry, pastis de nata. It's a crisp, flaky crust with a rich, creamy egg custard. This gives us energy to go on a walking tour of Porto. I make a little mistake, and I think that we're supposed to hook up with the tour at a place that is 5 minutes from our apartment. And actually, that's where we're going to end the tour. And now we have a 20-minute walk uphill to get to the beginning of the tour, and this is going to make us about 15 minutes late, assuming we don't die from heart attacks on this walk. We make it, we find the tour guide, we get together with the tour, all is good. The first place that he takes us to is this gorgeous, 2 churches actually, who are joined in the middle with a little teeny tiny apartment, apparently the smallest apartment in Porto. And this was for a priest to supervise the church on the left that was for all men, and the church on the right that was for women. I don't think he was very successful. Next, we discover that a lot of the fun things to see in Porto seem very Harry Potter. And we discover that J.K. Rowling lived in Porto and wrote a lot of the beginning of the Harry Potter series in Porto. So we discover a fountain in the downtown area that has griffins on it that inspired the term Gryffindor. We pass by a street musician then turn the corner. At the bottom of the hill is a strangely familiar bank with a domed top, which clearly inspired Gringotts Bank. And last, we hit the train station, which is filled with gorgeous tiles, something that Porto is famous for, Sal Bento, which was from 1916. Now we say goodbye to the tour, and we head off to our next destination, which will be the Museum Marionetas, or Museum of Puppets. So on the way there, we pass some wonderful shops. One is a broom shop, which is fascinating. And then we get to the museum, and we can't stop taking pictures. And probably one of the highlights was the puppet show that Joe and I performed, unrehearsed. After the Marionetas, we go back to the apartment to relax a little bit because we are exhausted from all that walking. And we get a bite to eat at a restaurant just down the street called Puro. After that, we just crashed because the next day we have to take a taxi to go to the wine country. This is the day we head to the Douro Valley. So we have a taxi coming, a small taxi coming. And before we head out the door, Renee and Joe do one last walk around Porto. They were in hopes of finding the bridge built by Mr. Eiffel, the Porta Donna Maria Pia, and they did find it. And so these pictures are from their camera. Off we go over to the wine country. Ventizello is unbelievable. It has a farm-to-table restaurant where we get included breakfast, and we ate every other meal there the whole time we were there. On this particular day, the highlight for me was goat. Well, the goat was a little much for me. Delicious, but I couldn't finish. So I asked if they had a box I could take it back to our room because I could eat it the next day. It would be delicious cold, I thought. And I was handed an artfully crafted tote that inside not only had the leftover goat, but had a china plate, a set of silverware, a cloth napkin, and a placemat to return to my room to have it whenever I wanted it. And I did have it the next day. It was delicious, and sadly, we gave back the basket. I started my day with a caramelized apple pancake that was delicious and very unusual. The beginning of the day seemed to be a washout. It was rainy, but that gave us opportunities to talk, to read books, to sit by the pool later when the sun came out. We kind of went our own ways, but ended up recircling back together. We had a wonderful dinner again with this restaurant. Joe and I had octopus that was a work of art visually as well as taste-wise. And we ended the evening with an almond tart. Had a nice walk back to our rooms. We were a little ahead of Renee and Joe, and so we missed the snake that they got to see slither across their sidewalk. I guess that was our clue. It was time to move on and go back to Porto the next day. But Europe will be back. A bientôt.